Hey, it's Brewbird. I'm a Canadian distiller making spirits in England. If you're interested in distilling or the drinks industry, then this is the channel to subscribe to. Today, I'm with Sam, the brand ambassador here at the Shakespeare Distillery. So what are we doing in today's video, Sam?
So today we are telling you how to distill and create your very own gin recipe. Let's go!
If you were to come to our distillery to make your own bottle of gin, Sam would be your gin experience guide. But instead of Sam, you've got me shepherding you through the recipe development process for your own craft gin. Here is the Shakespeare Gin School with all our little alembic copper pot stills. Now when you start coming up with ideas for your gin recipe, you might want to think about the styles of gin you currently enjoy drinking. When you're designing your recipe, consider referencing this botanical grouping chart. So first we have our essential botanicals, which include juniper berries. A gin must have juniper berries in it to be classed as a gin. Juniper berries are tart and sharp with a resinous, piney flavor and hints of citrus. Fun fact, gin is short for the Dutch Juniper, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which means juniper, the main flavor in gin. We recommend putting 25 to 35 grams of juniper berries in your recipe. 25 grams will give you a lighter style of gin versus a more heavy style at 35 grams of juniper berries. All of the recommended amounts assume that you're charging your still with 1 liter of 40% ABV spirit, and this will yield about 700 milliliters of gin at around 45% ABV. Okay, our next essential botanical is coriander. Coriander seeds are earthy, tart, and sweet, with a floral aroma to them. They counterbalance the juniper berries. So we recommend that if you go high in juniper berries, then you should go low in coriander seeds, and vice versa. Now our next essential botanical is orris root or angelica root. Both of these act as fixatives. They fix or preserve the other flavors in the gin, so they don't evaporate out over time. We find that orris root is better suited to lighter styles of gin, whereas angelica root works better for heavier styles. Next, we have our herbal category, which includes herbs such as lovage, sage, and rosemary. These can bring more earthy notes to your gin. Then we have our spicy category, which includes cinnamon, black peppercorn, or ginger for a bit of heat. The fruity category includes apples, blackberries, and such. The nutty category includes almonds, chestnuts, and pecans. They give a slightly waxy, oily mouthfeel to the gin while also enhancing the other flavors. Allergens aren't transferred through the distillation, so if you have a nut allergy, it's still fine to include nuts in your recipe. The sweet category includes things like honey, vanilla, and licorice. Then we have the floral category, which includes rose petals and lavender flowers to bring a perfume-like aspect to your gin. Lastly, we have our citrus category, which includes grapefruit, lemon, and orange. When you're developing your gin recipe, you'll want to think of what kind of gin style you want to go for. Do you want a sweet and fruity gin or one that's more citrus forward? Based on what flavor profile you'd like, you'll pick a few botanicals as the leading tasting notes in your gin. Then we recommend that you choose botanicals from each of these categories to create a more balanced gin. So if we want orange to be the leading flavor in our gin, we would put a greater amount of that in our recipe. But that doesn't mean we'll just put all the botanicals in the citrus category in our gin and forget the other categories, as that would make our gin unbalanced. We incorporate botanicals from the other categories so they can complement our leading notes. Based on our experience and research here at the distillery, we recommend always adding a citrus note and a spicy note to your recipe, as it creates more complexity in the gin. We also recommend that you pick around 8 to 10 botanicals for your gin. So you'll have 3 from the essential category, and then 5 to 7 botanicals from the other categories. Here are the recommended amounts for each botanical grouping. These charts were developed by the Shakespeare Distillery, and this is what our gin experience guests get when they come to make their own bottles of gin. There's a link to these botanical charts below in the description. So you've crafted your own gin recipe. Now it's time to make it. I'll just measure out the botanicals for the gin I'm making today. Sam said this gin reminded him of Christmas, as it tasted a lot like Jaffa cakes, which are chocolate and orange cakes that are popular here in the UK. So I'll call this the Jaffa cake gin. Here is the recipe for the Jaffa cake gin I'm making. I've got 25 grams of juniper berries, 5 grams of coriander seeds, a 1/4 teaspoon of orris root, 4 centimeters of orange peel, 1 single pink peppercorn, 3 millimeters of vanilla bean, 1 chestnut, 6 currants, and 3 mulberries. I'll get my alembic still out and measure out 1 liter of 40% ABV neutral grain spirit. If you don't have this, you can just purchase a bottle of cheap 40% ABV vodka and put it in your still. Next, I'll add in the botanicals that I measured out. Then I'll put the top on and screw on the line arm of the still to the condenser recipient. The heating element the still is sitting on goes from 0 to 6, so I'll set the heating element to 5. Then I'll put a little beaker underneath the condenser to collect the 4 shots of the run. It usually takes about 15 to 20 minutes to heat up. Make sure that the bottom of your pot is in contact with the heating element. Sometimes the bottom of the pot will not sit properly on the element, and this will cause your distillation to take much longer than normal to heat up. After 20 minutes, spirit has started to come out at around 65 degrees Celsius. At this point, I'll turn on the cooling water. So the condenser recipient fills up with this cold water, and when it gets to this height here, it will leave through the tubing on the top. We'll start collecting the 4 shots, which contain methanol, a poison, and we'll also collect our heads here as well. We collect 15 milliliters of spirit, and this will be discarded. After this, we'll switch to a large beaker and collect 425 milliliters of the heart of our run. The heat causes the spirit in our still to boil. There's a phase transition as the alcohol goes from liquid to gas. The gas rises up, carrying the flavors from our botanicals with it as well. The gas rises, goes through this line arm, and down here. In the condenser recipient, it comes in direct contact with the cooling water, which causes another phase transition. The gas quickly cools down and turns from a gas back into a liquid, which works its way down through the copper coils and is collected in our beaker below. The heart is the good part, which goes into our final product. The reason we say to collect 425 milliliters is because this amount will usually yield 700 milliliters of gin at around 45% ABV. So this makes the distillation process a lot simpler for you to do. I finished collecting my hearts, and so I'll turn off the heating element and turn off the cooling water. I'll dilute my spirit with reverse osmosis water until I get to 45% ABV. I'm checking the ABV with my Snap 40, but you'll probably have a hydrometer. I'll put this in a gin bottle, and I'm all finished.
So I hope you enjoyed our video on how to distill and create your own gin recipe.
In the meantime, please support the channel by giving this video a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more distilling videos. This is Brewbird.
And this is Sam.
Sending good vibes your way.
Hey, what are you doing?
Oh, sorry, Dave.
Bye! Alright, we have to do the outro. So come back here.
You know what the response is going to be to this, Dave? Sam's boring. We want Dave back.